Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're doing our budget presentation. Tonight is the city manager's budget coming your way for general fund, for some of our enterprise funds, and with the goal of helping you understand how we receive funds and how money is appropriated. And Ron, our clerk, is going to put up on our screen the documents that I'm using, and then those will be sent to you after the meeting. We do have 4 funds that you're not getting a budget for tonight, an overview, and it's because we're waiting for guidance from the state on our drug forfeiture, our federal revenue, police training fund, and indigent defense. They've changed the parameters, so we'll get those in the next few days, and those will be incorporated into our budget, and we'll give an overview of those at our next meeting. Additionally, the library has determined that they want to have their own bank account, do their own budgeting, and while they're a fund of the city and they will have to comply with audit requirements, they want to do their own, and that's perfectly acceptable. And so June 30th, they will start on July 1 with having their own payroll, their own accounts payable, their own HR, all of those services that the city provides. Typically, we do a cost allocation, and we have done that for years, but they wanna handle that in-house and hire their own professionals to do that, which is, many libraries throughout the state do that. So we don't have a library fund budget this year. So the first document to put up, Madam Clerk, is the estimated revenues. The general fund, oh man. Can we?
I can make it larger.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the report of where we get our revenues, and I'll go through that. We anticipate revenues of $17,948,753.75. And we'll go over, it's up there so that the public can look at this, but for you, this is gonna feel like a talking head report tonight, like I'm a bobblehead, so I apologize. Some of our department heads are here, if you have questions of them. But this will be pretty much a verbal report where you'll hear about the various places where we receive revenue. So the first 3 items, we've upped 3.3%. We believe that our property taxes for operating, our property taxes, rubbish, and our police and fire pension funds are going to come in up about 3.3% higher than last year. Our GM agreement, the 4th line item, we've put at $361,515.75 because we believe the increased production will result in increased revenue for the city, and that's a good thing. We've had in 2021 0 revenue from them. And last year, $289,215, and we'll see what the revenue is this year. And this is one of the line items that you will amend throughout the next fiscal year, based on actual amounts that come in. And that's very typical, that's not atypical. Income tax collection, we're recovering still from COVID. Our 2021 was about 2.6 million. We're anticipating about 2.3 million will come in with income tax revenue from Hamtramck. And I will tell you that that's one of the areas that we're working very diligently on. You will see later in the expenditure part of the budget that I'm recommending an additional staff person in that department so that we can follow up and do court proceedings when necessary to gain compliance and revenue in that department. You'll see that later. The next item is the Highland Park revenue. That's by contract. I think you're all aware that we process income tax for the city of Highland Park. Between 2 cities, it's not enough to have 1 staffer in there. When 1 staffer takes a vacation day, when 1 staffer is sick, when 1 staffer goes to court, the window is closed. So our goal is to have that open more and be able to receive documents and not make people wait until someone returns from court, a sick day, a vacation, etc. So that contract amount is set in contract, what we get from Highland Park, and that number will be $189,600 next year. We give income tax refunds, and we anticipate that'll be about $150,000, and that revenue is a deduction off of the revenue, so we have to subtract that out of our income tax. Penalty and interest, $180,000. We've taken that down a little bit based on what we're seeing this year. Property taxes administration fee at $141,000. Cable franchise fees, we get a piece of everybody that is a cable, takes the cable. We get a small stipend for that, and that's by state law. We get about $60,000. That has been steadily going down as people increase the ways that you can obtain news, TV, etc. So we're watching that very carefully. That may be one that you're gonna see on about a small percent decline over the next several years as people use different ways of streaming information. Business license, that's an actual number, 70,000, based on the number of businesses that we have mailed to and said you need to renew your business license. So we generally get very close on that number. And what I will tell you is we do budget conservatively. We're careful. If we don't think, we don't say, oh, somebody says, oh gee, you're gonna get revenue. Oh, guess what? We heard this is coming. Or the governor said, until that money hits our books, we don't get to count it. So whatever comes in, it's what you're actually going to see. This is what we truly know is coming in. Something new comes in, you'll do a budget amendment in the first, second, third, or fourth quarter. Okay, is that clear? All right, then we go to special assessments. That is property transfer affidavit funds, get about $4,000 a year in the assessing department. The building department, our revenue has been going up in that department. You know that we have a contract, you'll see that later in the budget for the expenditure side. But we receive about 300, it's been steadily increasing. We budgeted at 222,000. The reports that we're getting from the building department, you heard that a few weeks ago, it has steadily been increasing. And so we're estimating about $307,000 in shared revenue that we get with McKenna. That is our portion of it. Sanitation service fees, that's what homeowners pay for their trash, and it also covers the citywide cleanup, $648,000. Permit fees in the building department, $428,000. That's another portion of the building department. We don't put in anything for grants till we get them. So any of the grants that you hear us getting until we actually have that money in the bank, those line items will be amended. So you'll see when you get these reports, and you'll see on the screen, COVID money, state grants, etc. But until there's actual money, that doesn't go in the line item. Metro Authority, that's a piece of telecom money. We get about $65,000 a year. And then you go into the next three line items are our revenue sharing. So then there's a small state share revenue of $105,000. The statutory comes in at about $1.6 million, and this is based on projections out of the Department of Treasury. And then our constitutional, which is the one that's based on population, there's a formula for that one. We expect to receive about $2.7 million in revenue sharing dollars.
Is that the one that they're talking about increasing right now?
Go ahead.
So, the beginning of this month, the state treasurer's office did new estimates based on the latest census, and these are the increased numbers that they are expecting to be distributed.
Okay.
The other thing I failed to mention that I want to mention now, our budget year is July 1, June 30. Okay, July 1. So all of these things that we're talking about today will start July 1. We're ending our current fiscal year June 30th. The state of Michigan does their budget October 1 to September 30. Okay, October 1 to September 30. So there's always a little bit of, is the state gonna do what they said they're gonna do? What are we gonna do? So we have to use our most conservative, best estimate based on what the governor says. They have not yet settled the budget, and so we don't know what we're going to get otherwise from the state. This constitutional is where it's at, though. We get about $15,000 a year in liquor license fees. This is the portion of revenue for the judge's salary, $45,000. The judges have their salary partly from the city, partly from the state. The next is the Wayne County pilot. That's the pilot that, when the jail is fully functioning, is about $1.2 million. Based on current information in the last week, we believe that half of that's going to go away because it will be in the next year that we'll lose that money. I'm not saying that we won't come up with something else, but until something else is for sure, it cannot be in our budget. So based on the next 12 months that start July 1, we believe that the current Dickerson facility will only be in half production. Now, if something delays, we hope, then that money can be returned and we would get our portion of it. But right now, based on what's being said at Wayne County, this is our best estimate of what we believe we'll receive.
Debbie, can I say a word about that? Anytime a new jail facility is open, the department that runs it, the sheriff's department, they have to be trained in it, they have to be familiar with where things are at. But the jail over on I-75 is in the process of being completed. We don't know when the certificate of occupancy is gonna issue. And there will be a period of time that they will need to get up to speed and get themselves into the jail. That's the information that we've gotten. They've not given a precise date that says, on December 31st, we're locking the doors at Dickerson and not using it as a jail anymore, because that's the trigger for stopping the payment. But we know that, there is a date, and it's going to be at some point, we think, in the next 12 months. But there are a lot of different factors that are outside of our control, certainly, but even the county. So that's where it's coming from.
Would the out of our control be that it closes earlier or later?
Either, it could be either. I mean,
Okay.
They're not incarcerating people there now.
Right.
They're
Right.
using it for other things, and we've been told that the first day that they do not have to pay this, it will stop.
Of course.
So we've based this on the information we know today. If that changes, again, the budget is a living, breathing document that you are going to look at every month. When you get something from the finance department saying, here's what's going on, you'll see, where are we ahead, where are we behind, and you'll make amendments over the next year. From July 1st, you've already done that. You have already made amendments in this year's budget. It will happen next year, and it's our obligation to share with you quarterly what's happening. Okay? Next, we have, so the Wayne County Jail pilot is isolated in their own line item, but we have other pilot payments. There's 4 other pilot payments that the assessing department manages. So we have the Bogie Group that brings in about a little over $18,000 a year. Hamtramck Square 1 and 2 LLC brings in about $30,000 a year. Sarah Garrett Homes bring in around $13,000 a year, and Henry Ford Health brings in around between $45,000 and $50,000 a year. It goes up and down, and that's calculated in our assessing department. And those are agreements that were made long before my time, and those payments are monitored and by our treasury department who collects the money, but our assessing department is the one that annually calculates those funds. So those 4 together bring in about $100,000. Next, the city collects for the 4 marijuana sites here in our community, $5,000 each, for a total of $20,000 in permit fees, and that is the highest amount you're allowed to collect by the state of Michigan. Then we have the marijuana revenue sharing. And so before we get too far ahead of that, you know that this year we brought in about $226,000 just last week. The money has not arrived yet. It should arrive this week or next, but we've been told of the amount. It's a formula base. However, as more marijuana retail stores open, that may be diluted. So we didn't want to, in the very first year we get it, put next year that we're gonna get 226 again or more. So we put the number at 200,000. Conservative number, remember, this is conservative budgeting. And this is so that you don't overspend the city's revenues. And then, oh wait, next March, oh, we didn't get enough money from the marijuana, and we spent the money from the marijuana. So you wanna be careful not to overdo it. So we figured 50,000 per place instead of the number that came in this year. Next, accident reports, that's something that happens on the second floor. People pay for our accident report. We do anywhere from 30 to 35,000. This year it's been a little high, so we conservatively said this year we're at about 39,000. Let's predict 35,000 for next year, just a little percentage less. The year of 2020 to 21, we did 31,000. So you want to take those numbers, blend them, and figure out an average. Zoning and planning meeting fees has been pretty consistent, somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000, so we ended up at 7,000 for that, and that's the charges for holding those meetings, putting the ads in. You gotta remember, a lot of these things, like this line item's an easy one to explain. People pay a fee to host that, to have that meeting, because they're asking for something from the city, so they pay a fee for the meeting. With that fee, we put ads in the newspaper because we're required to post legal notices, we run copies, we have meetings, and we, share plans, etc. So there's a cost to the city. These line items, there's a cost on the reverse side, so you'll be seeing that shortly. All right, so the next line item is sale of city property. We will amend that as we sell properties. We don't know if we'll sell 1 or 20. So we don't anticipate a number there. That will be every time that there is dollars paid to the city for the purchase of vacant lots, we will amend the budget quarterly. Remember that all of that money, all of the profit goes to the MERS pension payment, and that's part of our 202 plan that we're required to have as a city. And so we've dedicated that money to that. We get a little bit of money in for grass and graffiti, so we put about $4,000 there. Parks and Recs fees, that's for people using the park, reserving the space. So DCFC is one of our biggest checks that we get for that. So we have about $5,000. They park at the rear of the park, and they pay $250 for that each time they do it. Parking meter collections, we have increased dramatically. Right now, we've brought in during 2021, we brought in a total of $42,000. This year thus far, we're at about that because we haven't reconciled. We anticipate next year that we'll bring in $360,000 from parking revenue. We know that it starts out hot and then it tapers off as compliance increases, so that $1 an hour, we believe about $360,000 will come in from parking revenue next year. Now you will see, we're gonna have an item where it shows what we have to spend, so that's coming later. So don't get too excited yet. Parking permits, same thing, about $10,000 worth of those. Towing and storage, the city receives revenue when cars are towed and there's storage fees. We share part of that as a part of our contract, towing contract. That's about $25,000. Fines and forfeitures through district court. It's actually fines through district court, but that's, all of the titles of this, just by way of information for you and the public, these titles that are here are set by the state. And we have to fit our revenue into the various categories. We don't invent these names. Fines and forfeiture district court, that is set by the state of Michigan, and then we have to slot our money into that. We're anticipating about $1.8 million coming out of our court. That will be revenue for the city. Interest earned on the cash we have in the bank is very low. With your own money that interest rates just on money put in a bank account are low right now, even when we're investing. So we're anticipating about $4,000 there. I wish it were better. Rents and royalties, that is, we have a cell tower on city property along with the sewer insurance that people buy through the company. Our contract allows for a small stipend for the city. So we anticipate about $25,000 coming in for that. Contributions and sponsors for city events. We have people that say, hey, you're putting up the holiday lights or banners or something, here's my contribution of $1,000. This is the line item that money goes into. So we anticipate about $5,000 of nice people saying nice things and wanting to donate to city events like our holiday lighting or things like that.
Would that count the banners that we talked about at the council meeting?
No, that is an in-kind because they're doing it directly.
Okay.
So that's like an in-kind contribution versus someone saying, here's $2,000, will you go buy them? Will you put them up? Will you do this? So it's a little bit different than that. This is people who sponsor like the holiday video, the holiday tree lighting, etc. Host agreement fees, we have two host agreements for our city right now. Wolverine over on Christopher Street. Am I right on that? Is it Christopher? Yeah, thanks. I always like a confirmation on Vincent or Christopher, so thank you. And then Hamtramck Recycling, we get about $8,000 just for hosting those two businesses in the city. And that comes out of when you do as a part of the county-wide program that is for sanitation and cleanup, et cetera. So both of them are businesses that would contribute in that way. Miscellaneous revenues, the fire department brings in about $7,000 from inspections and such things. And then we have a miscellaneous that we oftentimes try to slot into other categories. Revenue that comes in that's, you know, it's from this source or that source. We get about $40,000 a year that's not easily categorized as miscellaneous. The next four items are cost allocation. So as a part of the way the city's run, the way we receive grants, et cetera, for programs that are not general fund, these are our funds that are, what's the word I'm searching for? And these are our major
They're
streets,
special revenue
local
funds.
roads, special revenue, thank you, Susan. Cost allocation. So you see that major streets, local roads, and water and sewer are the three funds that do cost allocation. It's because we receive those funds in a different way. We're able to charge those funds for the services that they receive from the city. And so those numbers, $195,000 and $18,200 and $26,500 are the cost allocations for those. And again, the library determined that they want to do their own, so they're not being charged any fees for any of the services because they're going to move all their services to their own. So that gets us to $17,948,753.75 of revenue that we believe we're going to get next year. Questions, comments? I know that's a lot to take in. And so if you don't have questions now, that's okay. We're gonna have, not only we'll have this work session, we're going to have a city council meeting that's gonna have this. We're gonna have a public hearing. There's other opportunities, not only for you, but for the public also to weigh in, okay? So don't, you know, quite often this particular meeting is like nodding heads, and there's not a lot there, so I wanna make sure you're good with that. All right. Susan, anything I left out that you wanna point out, or did I cover everything well?
You got it.
Okay. All right, so now we're gonna go to the expenditure side. You heard what revenue we're going to get. 17 million, this is an important number, 948, 753.75. And we really hope, you know, that our conservative numbers, that things like GM, maybe the Dickerson doesn't leave as quickly as possible, as they're thinking. And because we thought that before, you know, that the Dickerson was going to leave, and we had to be careful about our numbers. And they're still functioning now, but we're gonna pay real close attention to that. We hope that we're gonna ask you to do a revenue adjustment. You're probably wondering, where's that $2 million that we are getting from the ARPA funds? You didn't hear me mention it, did you? Why not? Because until we allocate it to something, it's considered,
It's considered a liability
yes.
until we approve what we're gonna do with it and take the action. Once we do it, once we have costs, then we can recognize it as revenue. But we have until 2026 to actually spend those dollars. So we don't recognize it as revenue until we're actually gonna do the projects.
And we're able to
That's the way it works.
Yeah,
It's considered,
to
They
place
give
in
us-
any revenue, or does it have to be at like a specific spot where we could use it for?
oh, there are
oh, there's a lot of
several
rules. Yeah, yeah, I've sat through about 50 meetings on those, and I'm not joking. Like, you can't pay your pension with that at all. That is like the first thing they say at every meeting, that you don't pay down your pension, that's not allowed. But what you can do is you can just drop it in the general fund, spend it next week if you wanted to. However, what we, the MML, what I believe, is that we use that money, and I've said it as often as I talk about it, to leverage larger amounts of money in different ways. So if we have that money, and we are able to apply for a grant that says you need a 25% match, and I've actually on the state level been advocating for 10%. That's what we're trying for. You heard that at MML, I'm sure. If they say you have to have a 10% match to get $1 million, well, we've got that money. Okay, we'll apply for that. So what we're using that money for, because it's one-time money, is to get more somewhere else. So when you hear us talking about that, that's gonna be the push on our ARPA funds. Because infrastructure projects, things we need, lead service lines, and you heard the governor's announcement last week. Money, we're applying again to Congresswoman Lawrence, this time for lead service lines. And I wanna clarify the Brenda Lawrence money real quick, while I hope people are watching. We asked specifically for the bathroom project at the stadium and at Veterans Park. It's not just putting in a bathroom. It's the sewer lines all the way from Joseph Campo to the restroom. It's the water lines all the way from Joseph Campo to the restrooms. It's not just putting in 6 toilets and people think that they're, $100,000 a piece. It's not one of those kind of things. This is a major, major infrastructure project that will benefit that entire park for the comfort of the people that come there. So be clear with your constituents that this isn't 6 toilets. It's a major infrastructure project that will take months to complete. So, but our next ask of Congresswoman Lawrence is lead service lines, and they already know that. They knew that 6 months ago, that this was the first one. Our second one was gonna be lead. You heard her say at the press conference that they were doing 15 projects this year, and I'm confident that she'll look kindly on Hamtramck again. So, but we will continue to advocate for lead service line projects. I'm meeting with Michigan Works to talk about training some of our Hamtramck residents to do that kind of work. So that's an exciting time for us. Other questions? Okay. So the first budget, this is mayor and council. Mayor and council, your budget went up a little bit because the council approved a position for a volunteer coordinator position. So that, because council is the one that built that position, it's dropped into your budget. So that's $15 an hour, half-time position. So you go from your $27,000 salary to a $49,000 salary, because that individual will make about $22,000. It's a non-benefit position, but we're gonna have to buy a computer for the person, yes?
Okay, who's that person? Was it during our time or?
A position was approved, and we just onboarded the person. Her name is
Max.
How do you pronounce the last name?
Gilganis.
Gilganis. Gilganis?
Okay.
Gilganis, they said like the beer.
Gilganis.
Yeah.
And so the first day was today, and so she's going to be in charge of coordinating volunteers and activities throughout the city that would promote cleanliness, beautification, etc. She'll be housed in the mezzanine, and she'll report directly to me. But that was approved by the last council, So moving forward, it's in the council's budget.
And what's her budget?
She's going to be working at $15 an hour. That was what was approved, 29 hours a week. And then we anticipate, as we have for the last maybe 6 years, having a summer youth program, and she would oversee that. That budget is always a separate budget, because it's a grant budget. That includes salaries and supplies, so the supplies that she would use, gloves, garbage bags, et cetera. We already own rakes and shovels and paint and, things like that. But the things that she needs to do her job will be a part of that next grant budget. So we coordinate grants together. Okay. So the council, the role, I like to read what the goal of the department is. What is your role? So council, so that's the council budget, $81,725. The role of city council is to establish policies, including adopting the budget. As the decision-making body that directs the city manager, you as members study issues, review alternatives, determine the best course of public policy for the implementation by the appointed city staff. So your job is to direct me, my job is to direct staff, and we get things done together. 31st District Court, the judge submits her budget. There is no question about we have no oversight over her budget. Her budget total is $921,244 for the year. That includes her employees, all supplies, everything that she needs, membership dues, a portion of her salary that I mentioned, but $921,244. And this 31st District Court serves the city by handling all civil, criminal, traffic, small claims, landlord-tenant, along with other matters, and is charged with overseeing probation for the city of Hamtramck. The city manager's budget, I do want to mention that throughout the budget, you're going to see salary increases for non-union and union positions. Right now, we have contracts that, one that you have approved, that you're going to move forward at a 3% raise. That will be on the April 12th budget. You will also have, you also have, we're in negotiations with others, and those are unsettled. So those contracts are not reflected if their contract ends before the July 1 deadline. We have police, fire, and AFSCME union contracts that all expire before that time. You know that you've authorized city administration to do a continuation of the fire contract. I did reflect in my budget the fire contract that you approved, and then we'll finalize on April 12th. But the others, it does not reflect the status of current negotiations. We will bring that back. I expect before the time we do the final vote on the budget that we will have those final numbers, okay? So, in non-union positions, there are employees who have been working under the wage level for their job. There are employees who have been here a number of years and never received a raise, and I'm recommending raises for a variety of reasons. I've spoken to you before about retention of employees, of good employees, and when we don't have competitive wages here in our city, we will not be able to retain quality employees. We want people to stay because that knowledge is really important. And I regret that we have people that we're losing now, and part of it will be because of the salary and benefit packages here. I've told you that our department heads pay 15% into their own retirement. That is not the case in other cities. Other cities pay their retirement, or a portion thereof, whether it's a defined benefit, defined contribution, a 401k. Other people are able to do that. In our city at this time cannot. We can't afford to buy people out of their retirement. So you're gonna see some increases. City manager budget, I did not do an increase for myself, but I did do one for my assistant, so you're going to see an increase in that budget of about $11,000 based on the combined, a slight increase in July and a slight increase in January. So it's 2 stages that you'll see those increases. There is not, did I say it wrong?
No, but there's one other thing we want to say. Go finish this and then I'll.
Okay. I wanna say again, I did not put a raise in this budget for myself.
The other thing I want to point out, because you're gonna see it consistently in all departments with employees, we have been told by our insurance carrier to expect approximately a 20% increase in healthcare. I'm hoping that they're telling us a big number so that we're happy with them when it comes in at 15%. But
Or
they, or lower, but they told me 20. So you also see an increase in the wages in every department because we did budget for those increases. We should get those numbers.
We
So
hope,
typically, what we have to do is, the budget has to be approved by June 2nd. We usually don't get those increased numbers from the insurance agents until a week or two into June, and we try to approve the budgets before that. So we will come back at the first quarter with the appropriate adjustments, once we know what the real
right,
increase ended up
the,
being.
the actual number, and there's no getting around that, because by our charter, June 2nd is our date. If those numbers came in June 3rd, we would have already had to pass a budget.
So what is like a normal increase? Like, obviously, there was lots of surprise by 20%, so what's normal?
There was not a lot of surprise, quite frankly.
Really?
Because there, you know, what we've learned, and you know, is that throughout COVID, there was a lot of free health care given away. And I mean, obviously, our mayor could experience some of that and understand it maybe more deeply than any of us. But because of that, the insurance companies are trying to recoup what they have spent and make up for that as incrementally as they can. So in the case of one employee, it's going up about $1,600 just in the city manager budget. I don't take the insurance from here, I pay for my own, privately. So there's one employee in this city manager budget, and the amount for healthcare, let me get to my healthcare number, $13,470 for one employee. And we go out to bid every year. Okay, this is not something we only do once in a while, we go out every year and get the best prices we can. So one employee, a single employee, this is a single employee, I wanna be clear on that, so.
Just for historical perspective, Councilwoman, it was not uncommon in the early aughts for us to see double-digit increases that approached that number. Obamacare, by mandating that everybody purchase insurance and expanding the pool of people who are actually insured, did slow the growth down into single digits, so we got spoiled for a long time. But back when I started as a city manager, every year, the increases would make your eyes pop out.
Yeah.
So,
So-
go back to that.
I have been doing budgets for over 20 years in various municipalities, and easily over half of those, 20% was what I normally sat here and told the
Okay.
council or board.
Right. Not unusual. You're gonna find that with all of our insurances, property and casualty, you know, the civil unrest in the country. We learned that 2 years ago, and every year they say the same thing. Still got civil unrest in the country, your rates are going up. So, you know, you gotta realize when everything's going up, it's going up for the city too.
Insurance companies are like casinos, they never lose.
Right.
So there's no such thing as a risk to them that's too big. There's only premiums that are too small. And that's the way that that's the way it works on both sides, you know, the property and casualty and the health insurance as well.
I do wanna back up, I misspoke on something. The city manager budget does have, that's 2 insurance policies in there, I misspoke, I don't know where my head was. So for 2 employees, it was $13,000. I do not take that insurance, but were it not me in there, the next person might. We don't build our budgets based on who's sitting in the chair today, we base it on the number of employees, okay? The next one is the clerk's budget. Their budget comes in at $205,307. That is the clerk, the deputy, and that's the only 2 employees that come out of this budget.
You? You have a different number.
Why are you
on
doing the income tax?
You
Because you skipped it.
I did? Oh, maybe I turned 2 pages. I did. Let me go back. I have it. I turned 2 at once. I'm sorry. Okay, let's go back to income tax. This is the one where I told you we need to add an employee. So we call that a FTE, a full-time equivalent. So it will be a deputy director. The current staffer has been in the position a couple of years. She will be the director, and then we will hire a deputy director underneath at about a 38,000 salary at the beginning of the year. Mid-year would be about a $40,000 position. So that would be the current change to this, is an increase in salaries, and then subsequently, you know, the increased healthcare, but nothing in particular for any big increase for other things in that budget. The $240,000 in that budget that you see, that big line item, that is our contract with Innovative. So we don't process the income tax documents that people turn in. Just like with the IRS, everyone could mail their documents in. They could drop them in the Dropbox, because when we receive them, what we do is we take them and we ship them off to Eaton Rapids, and they are processed by a company called Innovative. It's a contractor. Our people are not hired to do that. Our people are hired to make sure that everyone pays income tax. And so that's what the 2 staffers do, is seek compliance and make sure every business is doing what they're supposed to, the commercial as well as the residential. And the company called Innovative will not use the court system to seek compliance. So that's why we have to have in-house staff to do that, both for Hamtramck and for Highland Park. And then we get that stipend for Highland Park, so that offsets the cost of this department. Okay? I'm sorry I skipped that one. All right, city clerk's office. On the city clerk's office, you have 2 salaries. You have, you know, the increases again in healthcare. The postage has gone through the roof, and that's all the postage for the city. That's not just the clerk's office, but we do figure out that we're going to, as a part of the clerk's office with the new change to the voters that are getting moved to another precinct, there's gonna be increased mailing for that. And then the increases in the building department, so there's just overall increased postage. We fill a postage machine. We increased the legal notices a little bit, because this year, you see, we have gone farther than, we budgeted for 10,000, we're up to about 13,000 for putting the required notices in the newspaper. So we increased the budget accordingly. Any questions on the clerk's budget? Controller. The controller's office oversees payroll, accounts payable, and all of the general fund and various funds, enterprise funds, all of the funds of the City Hall. So it's every financial record, making sure the annual audit's complete, all the reporting, all the grant compliance comes through that office. I'm recommending adding 1 full-time position at a $50,000 salary and benefit package. So the salary will come in, if the person does not need benefits, we can put more toward the salary. If the person needs benefits, then we would adjust the salary down accordingly. But that's adding 1 full-time equivalent. We had a very difficult time. We had a half-time person that we were trying to attract. We cannot find someone that will work part-time, so we're hoping that by making it a full-time job, that we'll be able to attract the help we need. You all know that Ms. Hendricks is leaving, and if you looked at the job description, you'll see that it's more than 1 person's work. We've been getting along, but I will tell you, we need another person in this department, so I'm recommending 1 more person, making that budget $334,680. The Treasurer's Department, any questions about that? Treasurer's Department, the bulk of what they have is salaries and some contracted services. That department has a treasurer, a deputy treasurer, and then 2 part-time people. And so that's the reason for the salary increase is is making sure we have 2 full-time people and 2 part-time people that will staff that office. Making sure that we don't have our people waiting in line to pay their bill and come to City Hall is a big deal, so we want to make sure that we're doing that. This one, is that the div dev?
It is
Yeah.
a big part of it.
I wanted to make sure I was correct, that the contracted services, the big part of it is the fees for hosting the DivDat machine. And they get a portion of that, we have to pay a fee for each transaction. Well worth it to have that convenience for our community, that they can pay anywhere, literally anywhere. You know, a grocery store, downtown if they work downtown. I mean, there's DivDat machines everywhere,
Do
so,
we pay a fee for people who use the app too?
yes.
Even though people already
No,
are
that
paying a
one,
fee
they
to
pay the
use?
user fee.
Okay,
I thought, okay, we don't pay that fee for the point and pay.
okay.
That's a user fee, and that's anytime there's a credit card transaction, there's a user fee. And so it's called a convenience fee, because it's convenient for them to pay in that way. And so they absorb that cost. We're not allowed to absorb that cost. The DivDat machine is different. That is programmed in a way that we are allowed to do it, that we pay a transaction.
Okay.
Because that's not a user fee. And that is the treasurer's budget. Assessor's budget, we are moving toward the time when we will reduce the amount of support that we get from a third-party contractor. But this year, I'm recommending keeping those professional services. Our assessor Conrad has achieved his level that's necessary to run the department, but we want to go through one more cycle of having that assistance of people that have been doing it for 20 years. And that's important. Remember, and I'm going to say it every time I get the chance, 100% compliance. They received a score from AMAR for doing it right. That says a lot about that department, and quite frankly, be glad that we have the talent we have in Conrad and in Tom and Colleen, and, you know, Moon has left us, but, you know, we'll have an assistant director in there as well, so that's the 2 salaries, along with the professional service contract from Assessing Administration Services, yeah, thank you. Conrad has requested to have a GIS component in his, about a $20,000 capital outlay, so to activate GIS, and that's a project. Do you want to speak about that, Conrad?
Sure. GIS is useful for not just the assessing department, but it would be used for.
Wherever you want to be.
GIS would be used for multiple departments. So I'd be working with Bill and Public Services, Community and Economic Development for zoning maps, which they've already updated, but integrating all the new maps or updating the maps we have, which have been updated since I think 2008 or 9 in the GIS shape files. And to be able to work with multiple departments to use this, and even the elections can use it to do election maps and to redo the maps in there. It's a component that's used in every city. Most counties, except for Wayne County, are the ones who do the GIS. Unfortunately, we're in Wayne County, which doesn't have a GIS department. So it's a fee that in other communities it goes to the county where they update and do it. Over here in Wayne County, we have to update our own. I'll be reaching out to Detroit to see if we can do it, work with their GIS department, but I'll also be looking at other companies who would be able to do that for us as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Conrad. Yeah, very 21st century, doing what they need to do, getting these right, you know, handling that department correctly, and much appreciated. And I skipped reading some of these descriptions of what the department does. So the assessor's office assesses all taxable and real property for the city annually, completes the annual assessment roll, and the purpose is to levy the taxes that are lawful for the city. I didn't do treasurer's department either, and I want to do that one real quick. They bring in the receipt, deposit, control, distribution of all receipts, taxes, water, sewer, other revenue, and then distribute those property tax collections to the entities they belong to, and then they are responsible for the investment of funds. And I like saying this every once in a while because people think when they pay their property taxes that we get all of that money. When you look at your property tax bill, it's important to see who levied that on you. So when it says recreation millage, the city doesn't get to keep that, nor can we deny distributing it. The voters voted to pass that, So that goes to the recreation department and they disperse those funds. Same with library millage, same with the museum, the DIA millage, same with the smart millage, all of those things go to other places, and we're responsible to make sure. If we didn't send that money there, we'd be in so much trouble. So, you know, quite honestly, when people suggest otherwise, it's very foolish. Election budget, salaries are the election inspectors, the part-time clerk that you see Barry in the clerk's office. His money is not in the clerk's office budget because he only works on elections. The receiving board at the end of the night gets paid. Department of Public Service overtime, because they go set up the election precincts, and the Bengali program coordinator are all in that salary line item. Most of those jobs are part-time, so you don't see a big salary line item. And this is where we'll pay for translation services out of, et cetera. Any questions about that budget? Yes.
Would this include the hopeful Arabic translations, or is that not included in here yet?
I can comment on that. So the reason that we have a Bengali ballot is because it's been mandated to
Right,
us, correct?
absolutely.
So the state does not authorize any community to just say, gee, I want to have a ballot in Greek, because we have a lot of Greeks here. I want to have a ballot of Italian, because our community is Italian. It doesn't work that way. We're going to, and have intended all along, to make all of our election materials, the posters, the directions inside of your absentee ballot that you get, the directions at the polling place, et cetera, in Arabic. We know that our community has a large amount of Arabic speakers, but in order to have an Arabic ballot, it is a completely different process from the state of Michigan to Wayne County to the Election Commission. It's not a council action to do that. You can say, try to work on that, Kathy Anger, please, city manager, work on that, but it ultimately is not your decision, nor is it mine, to do an Arabic ballot. We can produce a sample ballot that we can put in the polling place, we can produce something to put on the wall for people, but putting one that goes through the machine is a whole different process. So that's why I've said, don't overpromise something that you don't know if you can do. So, you know, if there's going to be a resolution in the coming days, direct the city manager to look at it, to do all we can, but the actual ballot itself through a Dominion machine is highly unlikely for any community in Michigan. It may happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying we don't get to choose that. Okay?
But it's in process, the city's working on that.
The city is, the city has already committed to producing as many the materials that are for the process of voting. The actual ballot is not in the city's control. We'll communicate with the state of Michigan, with Wayne County, with Dominion, et cetera. We are mandated to do Bengali, and that's why the state permits it. But if a community came and said, we want to do Italian ballots, they would not be permitted to do that. If a community came and said, well, we have a lot of Greeks, we would like it in Greek, they would not. They could print their materials, but the actual ballot has a different process than what people are generally thinking.
But has the city officials contact, the
Oh,
state
absolutely.
to
We've
have
already been in contact for
Arabic
months.
ballot? And that's what we wanna
So,
clear
so
to.
Councilman, what I'm saying is, we've contacted and made those requests, but it's out of our hands if that decision is ever, if we're mandated to do it. There's a whole different process. It's not just we'd like to do it, because the whole state of Michigan would like to do things, but if they let everybody who would like to do something do it, it would cause a lot of confusion with the election commission. So the likelihood right now today for an actual ballot that feeds into the machine is very low. Not because we're not trying. It has nothing to do with not trying. It has to do with the rules associated with the ballot process. Okay? But you will have all the materials, and we can do a sample ballot that will show people how to, in each precinct, how it matches up, and it'll be in the voting booth. So, I mean, we know we can do that. without
So
check.
what was done to mandate the Bengali? What's the process?
There was
It's
a lawsuit that was filed, and as part of the resolution of that lawsuit, we agreed to, print the ballots in Bangla. They are there are a handful of languages under the Voting Rights Act, where we have to, where, the federal government will look to your population and see what percentages there are of what are called, I believe, low proficiency English. No, low proficiency English voters, I think is the term that they utilize. But that was a federally mandated decision. And there was a lawsuit that was filed over it last year. Rather than spend the money fighting the lawsuit, we want Bengali people to have access to the ballot, even if they are what the statute calls low proficiency English voters. We still want them to have effective access to the ballot. As an Arab American, I want Arab Americans to have the same kind of access, but the law is different for both.
I think the
groups.
important thing is it's tied to census numbers, and without the Arab Americans being broken out in the census, there's not much to do to bring it back to like how the Bangla is mandated.
And again,
We'll have all the election materials translated into Arabic. We've already been working on that since middle of last summer, fall, because we did some of the things, as many as we could. We get them directly from the state, some of the voting instructions, et cetera.
and then going back again, having a resolution, it's not really, remembering that, let's have this happen, just telling you to see if we're able to get it.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's not even in our hands or your hands, it still goes
No.
back to,
No, you do not have the authority to mandate an Arabic ballot. It's not,
I
that is not in
personally-
your jurisdiction.
Yeah, I personally don't think it's important, and, I mean, it's not that difficult to read the ballot. Everyone has, we do absentees these days, and everyone has someone in
To
the
help.
house to read the ballot for them. But I don't know what they are doing in Dearborn now. I think they are doing something in this.
Their census numbers are different than ours, and, at the end of the day, the Bengali issue was one that was raised in a lawsuit that I was unaware of the allegations. I don't think all the allegations that they made were necessarily truthful, but that defending that was gonna cost you quite a bit of money, and the end result, even if we prevailed, was that we would be in a position of perhaps closing the access to the ballot to people that we, quite frankly, we want everybody to vote. We want, as much as we can do, we wanna get people out to the ballots to exercise their democratic rights.
and recapping to our mayor, what he said, we made it here without having an Arabic ballot. It just, if there's ways, that, it's possible to have it, like, the reason I'm bringing this up, so our viewers, whoever's watching us right now, know this information.
Good.
Because there's info out there saying that we don't wanna do it. So, and that's not true, it's not really in our hands, even though there's a
Correct.
resolutions being placed in,
Correct.
but in the end, still,
So, and it's all about, Councilman, what is your jurisdiction? And that is not in your jurisdiction. So it's just
Or
knowing
ours.
what you have authority over. It is in your jurisdiction to say we'd like those other materials printed that way. And we're trying to accommodate that. We try hard, but we fail, because that is not the easiest thing for anyone. Even when we use professionals, they differ on spelling. We've seen that example here, so.
love you all.
All right, so we'll keep you abreast of that, though. Any other questions about the elections budget? All right, the next one is general administration, and that sounds like, what is that about? This is the department that all department services come out of. So when you see this, you're gonna see things like, the IT right. When you go down to professional services, 264,801 for $83,000. That's what we pay for IT Right to be our technology contractor for the entire city. So, I mean, that's cheaper than having a staff person doing that. If we hired someone to do it, that's much cheaper. We're self-funded for workers' compensation, and so we can base that on what we know today, and we know we need it to be a little higher than it currently is, so $231,000 for our workers' comp. Our employees are made whole when they're out on workers' comp, excuse me. I'll just skim through these. When I mentioned earlier the civil unrest, look at 101, 264, 910, city insurances, predicted to go up 23 to 25% from current, which we budgeted for 380,000. Our costs are coming in at 389, so you'll see an amendment for that. Next year, they're predicting $483,000 for our insurance. And like we said, those bids will come in June. You'll likely do,
These bids will come in October.
oh, that's right, excuse me, healthcare's June. City insurances like this will come in later in the year. We spoke with Hutton Locker last week, yeah, and they're gonna go out to bid and get the numbers, but this was the prediction, the 23 to 25. I'm sorry, I had the wrong date. Fines and fees are holding steady around 11,000. It was 13, then it was down lower. Fines and fees, our emergency loan, we have 2 more payments left on our emergency loan for fiscal year 23 and 24. And this one is 227,543, so that's about $1,037,000 for all of our services that general administration supplies. Did you want to?
Just want to point out that we have the general obligation expense, which was another emergency loan. In the current fiscal year, it's only about $7,600. That was a final interest payment. One is paid off, the other we have 2 more years to pay off.
Questions, comments? The next one is buildings and grounds. That's the Department of Public Services, but I also want to mention that Bill's department not only has this budget, but it has a local roads, a major roads, and a water and sewer department budget. So when you look at the salaries in this budget, it's only a portion of the work that they do. You'll see those salaries in other places as well. We're recommending in those 3 budgets to have 1 more employee added to it. And that'll be split amongst the 4 different areas that we have. So major and local roads, depending on the work that they do. Their time cards are complicated because we have to do actual time spent. And so Bill has a yeoman's work to figure out, who's doing what which week and how we charge these funds, because we have to be accurate on that. We can't just guess. Oh, by the way, Bill's working this week on roads, let's throw that whole number. No, we're precise on that. We really work carefully to make sure we're accurate. They have very little overtime in this budget, because this is more the actual people that are inside of City Hall, a piece of that. You're gonna see in the water and sewer budget, the roads budget, that there is overtime in those. But this is salaries, those healthcare, do we have any healthcare in this one? I don't think we do.
No, we allocate healthcare
I think
to
we
other
do.
funds.
Yes, so this has the building maintenance, the things that we fix in the building. Our utilities are all in here, all of the utilities for the building are in here, street lighting is in here. Remind me what the capital outlay is on this one. I don't think I wrote down the capital outlay more than 5,000. 47.5 for capital outlay, Bill, help me out here.
And you didn't bring the page either?
I didn't bring that page, well, wait, is it on this page? Here we go,
No, it was not.
not on that page. All right, well, we can come back to it, Bill, because I know I have,
47.5.
Yes.
47,500.
yes.
Remember what we had in there?
What we had in there?
Yeah, what the capital outlay was. I don't remember what we were buying. Was that the extra equipment, or was that one of the vehicles?
That was vehicles.
Okay, good. If it's not, we'll come back to you on that, I promise you, because that might have been out of the street fund or something, too. It might have been his vehicle. All right, so I'll double back on that. We have property and parks maintenance in there, 66,000. We're out to bid right now on our mowing and parks, so we'll come back with an actual number if that needs to be amended. But those four funds have all of our DPS employees. So I'll say them by first name: Bill, Brian, Dave, Shuhada, Crystal, Eddie, Anthony, Bill. Reed is our newest employee, and we currently have Robert as well. So those salaries you're going to see spread over different budgets. And we're adding one additional person to spread over the budget, because we just don't have enough. Legal stayed pretty consistent. We upped it a little bit because we have several matters at hand. Our professional services for the Sarah Garrett lawsuit, because we anticipate building the last 3 houses in the next fiscal year, we believe that our costs for legal services for that particular line item that we've always isolated will go down considerably, and we're really happy about that. Our prosecutions, we think, will stay steady. We've never put money in the budget for lawsuit settlements. I don't want to signal anything about lawsuit settlements. We'll settle and then amend budgets as we do that.
It should also be noted, because I know that there's been commentary about this before, that the money that you pay your lawyers is not $1.256 million. That includes settlements, which of course I don't control, so.
And it's not money that goes into Allen Brothers, so just to be clear. So sometimes people think that that's all money that goes to him, but it does not. That the 2021, 560,000, nearly 561, was the lawsuit settlements, several of them.
178, so that the UR 31, that is what we have been ordered to pay the plaintiff's attorney.
Right.
So we don't pay our attorney. The court order charged us to pay the plaintiff's attorneys.
And that's Michael Barnhart.
And
So-
that court order is almost as old as I am. So the city's been paying one attorney on that case almost as much as what it pays for your entire legal services budget.
Correct. And so we're excited.
That'll go away, is what
That
you're
will go
saying.
away primarily when these last 3 houses are built, and that'll be the end of it. So, I'm looking forward to that day. Human Resources, that department is charged with, the managing the employee life cycle, recruitment, employee labor relations, compensation, performance management, training, all the policies and procedures, and managing the workers' comp situations. That budget, I'm recommending adding a part-time person in addition to, we have currently a human resource generalist. It's a 1-person department. The amount of work in there for 1 person is ridiculous, and so I'm recommending adding a part-time person. Oh, there you go, thank you. Adding a part-time person to that budget, just a half-time at $18 an hour. And I average those out. If someone comes in with a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or a high school diploma, we pay different rates for the part-time individuals based on their degree status. Bill looked up to $47,000 in his budget. Reserve garage roof, doors, windows, rear parking lot of City Hall. Thank you. I didn't write that one down. The next one is retiree costs, and you learned about this last week at the city council meeting when you learned about our MERS obligation. And I do want to mention a couple of things here. The second line item is healthcare for 2 duty disability retirees. So we had 2 individuals that were hurt in the line of duty, were forced to retire. We continue to pay their health care. We do not pay health care for any other retiree of the city of Hamtramck. No one else gets it. We do, at this time, allow people to purchase health care on our group plans, and our HR department manages that purchase. We are going to be moving toward helping them to buy on the exchange. And if they continue to buy through us, doing it directly with our vendor, so that our HR department is not coordinating all of that. So we're moving in that direction. which will be a bit of a change, but there are some plans out there that are better than what we can get on a group rate at a cheaper price. And so our retirees would be wise to go to other places. Our MERS contribution, $5.7 million. I want to take this moment to do a commercial. So when we were going over our revenue, you remember me saying that our income tax revenue, we expect would be about $2.3 million. Everybody remember that? About 2.3 million. And that our total revenue would be just shy of $18 million. When we owe $5,700,000 for our retiree pension, we are sending all of our income tax money to pension. We are sending all of our income tax money that we collect to pension. We are not collecting 5.7, but we are collecting a little over 2 million. And because it's part of the general fund, and that's how we pay this MERS payment, that money is going there. So any idea that we should take any piece of our revenue and dedicate it toward one certain thing, we already are. We already are. So I just want to be clear, when people say, take this money and dedicate it to there, it's already happening. Your general fund revenues are just shy of 18 million. Your expenditures, you're gonna learn that full amount. All of your revenue's going for these bills, okay? So just to be clear. Any questions on our MERS contribution? Now, we're hoping that the legislation passes and we get funded to 60% and it does something to our bottom line. But until we know that, this is where we're at. This one's not changing.
There is
Okay.
no complaint for the income tax from the community. You can see the system and this income tax, they're gonna go for the retirement.
So our income tax revenue that we take in is already dedicated to paying our general fund expenses, of which one is 5.7 million for MERS. So all of our income tax money already goes there. I will tell you that there's been some talk in the community about raising our income tax rate here. Right now, currently, it's 0.5% for non-residents. So if you don't live here and you get your income here, you pay 0.5%. If you live here, you pay 1%. There's been some talk amongst the community. That was researched in 2017 when I became city manager. The law has not changed. We cannot, you do not have the authority, nor do the voters of this community have the authority to raise the income tax rate. It's not your jurisdiction, another thing. So the way that that would work, if that was to be raised, the number, it would come through the state legislature. So currently, the current chairman of that committee in the state house feels that all income tax is wrong. He would like to abolish it all. And of course, he's not getting the support of his municipalities from his colleagues because they need this revenue. If someone said we couldn't have this 2.3 million, what would happen to Hamtramck in about 2 years? We wouldn't be able to meet our obligation, right? So that's what other cities are saying. Cities like Grand Rapids, cities like Flint, you know, cities that need that revenue. So the likelihood of anyone carving out Hamtramck for a higher rate is highly unlikely to get the vote of the legislature. But that's the way it's done. So right now, state law does not allow us to collect more than 0.5% for non-residents, 1% for residents. So if anyone's asking me about that, if they need more information, I have the law on my desk and would be happy to show them how that works. Years ago, Detroit was carved out. Highland Park was carved out for different rates. That is not the case today for us. Okay? All right. The next one is the police contract. The police budget, that contract is currently being negotiated. I hope to bring you something very soon. So the negotiated, the negotiations we have been having are not reflected in this budget. You'll see them after you approve or, whatever negotiation. So what you're seeing here is a change in the requested budget to 3.5 million at this time, mostly salaries, overtime, insurances, just the general things that we've been running the police department. Some things have gone up, some things have gone down. We don't lodge as many prisoners as we once did because now they're putting, what?
Tethers.
Yes, tethers. I thought you were telling me something different. They're now putting ankle bracelets on people and not incarcerating them, so we're spending less money on that. Everything else has stayed very consistent. The change will come when we negotiate the contract that will begin July 1. The next one is, and I should have said what the police department does. They're committed to preserving the public peace and order, apprehending violators and offenders, to protect our community, our property under the laws of the state, ordinance of the city in a fair and professional manner. The next one, parking enforcement. This is the expense related to the parking system. We have to have internet in order for the parking meters to work, and we have to bear the cost of that. So the state says utilities, telephone, that's the category we can use, but it's actually providing the internet, the phone connection for the system. So that's about $36,000, that's a fixed cost. The fire department budget, after arbitration, was 2 positions less by attrition, but we have included the 3% raise that will be on the agenda next week that council is aware of. So that is included in this budget. I think this budget is as close as it's going to be at $2.9 million. It's a little less than it has been based on those 2 positions, even with the increases in healthcare. But this is generally has been a static budget. A few things, the ambulance service you'll see is one of the line items in here that has gone up considerably. Remember, we were paying $144,000 annually. I mean, we started at 0, then 144, and then we needed the peak time ambulance because of the high level of service that's required. So we're looking at $324,000 next year for our ambulance budget. So remember, we're continuing to negotiate in hopes that we can bring that back in-house. Okay. Building inspection, this is the professional services related to McKenna. So we pay them to manage our building department, and we get a share of that money by contract. And so we're believing, based on their numbers and based on the activity that they're doing now, that that's going to increase to about $551,000, which means our share goes up, which is good, in the revenue side. The next one is our contract with Priority Waste. Those are fixed costs in the contract. And so that's just, that number is plugged in at $810,000 for next year. It went up incrementally each year of the contract. Community and Economic Development. This is wages for the CED director, and we do share a portion of that, 20% the DDA pays for that salary, because that person oversees the DDA activities as well. A deputy director, and then 1 part-time individual in that department. Professional services in that department, they're working with McKenna on a lot of the ordinance, the planning, etc., and those are costs to us as well. Code enforcement is probably the budget that you're gonna see the biggest change in. I'm recommending adding 1 part-time officer. And because we're doing that, we need to buy a computer. The tablets that they're using in the field, all but 1 are obsolete now. And so it's 5 new tablets for the department and 1 vehicle, because we have 3 vehicles for that department. But to rotate, we're not gonna have 5 vehicles for 5 employees, but we will have 4 vehicles so that they can rotate. It'll be a 7-day-a-week operation. And with 1 additional part-time officer, we'll be able to have a better handle on the entire city, not just portions of the city. So remember, this code enforcement is, the things that are on the ground. The McKenna looks at the structures. Now, they do work in cooperation. If our guys are out in the field and there's something crashing down on a house, they're gonna tell McKenna, hey, you got something to go look at. But this code enforcement department is generally the alleys, the streets, the snow, and the garbage. That's the enforcement. Questions there?
So how much employees do we have right now?
Excuse me?
How many employees do we have in the code?
So we just added one, Nicole, correct? So currently we have Richard Radke, the supervisor, Connie Watts, the assistant, our newest person hired today, Greg Henry, so that's the third. And then we have one more
It'll be probably toward the end of April.
toward the end of April. We interviewed, we had a successful interview, doing backgrounds and all of that. But I'm recommending adding one more.
So that means there'll be 4 officers and 1 supervisor, correct? Okay.
Correct. And those 4 are part-time, 29 hours, and that includes their court prep time. So they're out on the street about 20 hours each, and then in-house about 9 doing the paperwork that's related, preparing or attending court. Operating transfers out, I'm gonna have Susan do, because every time I say this one, I say it backwards, because this is government accounting at its best.
So the operating transfers out is money that the general fund sends to a different department. We have to have, all of our funds are required to be balanced, which means how much money we're gonna spend this year and how much money we have in fund balance in each fund has to be 0 or a positive number. We can't let fund balance go negative. So the Indigent Defense Fund, Kathy mentioned, we're waiting for some new guidance from Lansing. So I'm not sure right now what's gonna happen there. Hopefully we'll have that answer this week. We also have for several years had operating transfers out to the 911 fund. So that is the fund that pays for our full-time 911 operators. The amount of money that we receive for that does not cover the cost of having our 911 operating. So the general fund has been contributing to that. So that's what you're seeing here this year. It has gone up from the prior year. We're bringing in more 911 full-time officers. We've been staffing with a lot of part-times and
For some stability in the department.
retaining them. The chief would like us to move them to full-time. So they kind of moved from just police department part-time people to 911 operators. They moved where they're at.
And that means
Budget.
benefits and stuff too?
Yes. So our 911 operators are members of the AFSCME union.
Oh,
So
okay.
they get all the benefits of an AFSCME employee.
Okay. The DDA budget, is $35,000. Am I in the right order? Am I in the right order?
Fine.
Am I okay?
Just go ahead, yep.
All right, the DDA budget is $35,000, and because the DDA has a board of directors that oversees the DDA budget, they spend their money on special projects, et cetera. And so they currently have a fund balance. They haven't spent all of their money every year, but they get about $35,000 a year added to that. And then they determine at their meetings of their board of directors how they will spend that money. And that's a special amount that's put on the DDA businesses, Downtown Development Authority. It's primarily the businesses on Joseph Campo from Carpenter to Hamtramck Drive, but also a few of the spurs to the First Alley or right across. When the district was drawn years ago, there were businesses that wanted to be in the DDA. It does not include the town center, that's carved out. So that section right there on the corner of Holbrook and Joseph Campo, even though they're on the street, that's not in the DDA district. They get invited to everything, but they aren't paying that additional tax, like the storefronts that face front to Joseph Campo. Yeah?
I'm following you.
Okay. All right, 911.
Kathy, regarding the DDA,
Mhm.
so the south end of the south side, is that included in the DDA?
Yes,
All those businesses do pay some
they pay
little share.
extra, yes. So it's a little under 2 mils that they pay, on their tax bill. They can see on their tax bill, it'll say DDA on it.
Okay.
And they collect, the whole DDA district, that whole entire area, only collects $35,000. It's a very small operating budget.
They take some for all the business to keep it clean, the sidewalk.
Yeah, they do, they spend their money on snow removal, they spend it on beautification, they spend it on facade grants. And that's, their board of directors decide how they want to spend it. You have no jurisdiction over that.
911?
Mhm.
So the revenue we get from 911, it says state of Michigan when you look at it. For us, it really comes from the city of Detroit. It's that small charge, if anybody still has a home landline, there's a small charge on your phone bill for 911. It might be on cell phones now too. That money is collected, it is sent to the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan disperses it. For us, they disperse to the city of Detroit, and then the city of Detroit gives us our share. It was down significantly last year, and when we were trying to work with the city of Detroit on what's going on with it, what we kept hearing is they were having issues with balancing it, and they were late, and, they still had a lot of people working from home. So it's really unclear to us because it goes through so many steps before it gets to us. But we are being optimistic with this one and saying it's gonna go back to what it used to be before COVID. We're gonna have to watch this one very closely, but we're gonna try to take the optimistic approach to it. As I said, when we were talking about transfers a few minutes ago, basically what this department does is pays the salaries and benefits of full-time 911 operators. It also pays for the maintenance of the Clemis system. And I'd look to Mr. Gambarino to explain Clemis, maybe he could do it more proficiently than me.
Clemis is an operating, I'm pretty loud, I'm sure I can hear me from that. Clemis is an operating system maintained by Oakland County, which all police departments, well, not all the police departments, but most of the police departments in Metro Detroit operate under. It maintains all our records, police reports, searches, our MDTs in the cars, in a whole gamut of things. But Clemis is sort of an umbrella organization, like I said, through Oakland County that all the police departments use and utilize. So it's sort of, the odd man out is Detroit. For some reason they use Clear, but everyone else uses Clemis. So it's just something that's sort of a necessity for modern day policing.
And we get a quarterly invoice from them for providing us the access to their software.
Okay. The next one is our CDBG budget. We are guaranteed $20,000 annually. That's the agreement that Wayne County has with the partners throughout Wayne County. We apply for other amounts. So for instance, you know that our current project is finishing the Hamtramck Stadium. We applied for $500,000. We got that along with other funds put together to improve the stadium. The next project that you're gonna see, that CDBG application, is the 2 alleys on the east side of Joseph Campo between Poland and Joseph Campo? No, I think it is. Or Poland and Holbrook, excuse me. Might be Florian Alley too. So it's the last 2 alleys from Holbrook to meet with all those that are finished on the east side. So those are the final 2. And then also a mural project to beautify for the Joe Louis Greenway. And that was a $250,000 allocation for that. So we had 2 alleys repaired. If we would have only put in for alleys, we would not have gotten this. But because we made it a beautification with the mural, we were approved. So it was a really good process for us. We will continue to apply for CDBG, and again, until you have money, you don't get to see money in the budget. You'll see it as we do any kind of amendment.
And those budget, or those grants for the alleys, does it come, how often do we get those?
So that one was, we applied for $250,000 for 2 sections of alley, and on the east side of Joseph Campo to complete, and we made it about the Joe Louis Greenway. So the Joe Louis Greenway is coming through that alley, you can't have potholes and et cetera. And so rather than use general fund money, we applied for community development block grant money. So that's an annual allocation, we make application, we'll do several applications for ideas of things that can bring money to the city. We're currently working with Wayne County on another project for facade improvement for both Joseph Campo and Conant. That's something that will be about a $750,000 allocation. But we've been working with them for some time on that one, so that's one I hope to bring to you soon. But this one was a one-time, $250,000. I didn't mention alley money that's the appropriation from the state legislature that Representative Ayash, because we don't have it yet. And so once it's going to be allocated, you'll see that in the
And that's
future.
what I was,
So you're learning about the budgeting process and the way, it's not like simple at-home budgeting in your checkbook or in your bank account. Governmental accounting has certain rules that you have to follow, and when you can put the money into the budget, or you're holding it until it's allocated. It has to have that matching component. This puts us at a total appropriation, back here, of $19,777,103. We will be dipping into our fund balance 1.828,349.25, which is much less than we have done in previous years. I do want to remind you that we haven't settled a couple of employee contracts. That has to happen and will happen over the next several weeks, hopefully before you pass a budget, or we'll need to do a first quarter amendment. But right now, looking at $1.8 million into our fund balance.
Theoretically, we would see that gap close as we get grants and other allotments of money from the state or federal government
Not
over
so
the
much
year? or-
grants.
Okay.
Not so much grants. If our income tax collection improves, if everybody that lived in this city and every business would pay their income tax and comply, we would probably see that go away.
Completely.
That's something that I wish this mayor and council would focus on, is compliance for income tax. You have revenue in here from marijuana businesses and from parking meters that you didn't have before. We had to subtract revenue for the Dickerson facility. So there's different revenue sources. You know, when the city council previous to you said, go find new revenue, the parking meters was one piece of that. That is a new revenue for this city that we've never had before. The marijuana money is new revenue that the city has never seen before. And, you know, we are at our cap for property taxes and such. We can't go higher. You know, you remember from when Jim and Susan and I did our first meeting, when we talked about the rates of income tax, where people think they're paying so much. We're paying 2003 rates, you know, it has not gone up. So the money that we have is the money that we have, the money that we spend is the money that we spend. We're looking forward to GM doing better than we predict. There's a lot of things in, thus far I haven't shared with you yet our street budget, and this was only general fund, right? And then the DDA is a part of that, et cetera, the 911. We're gonna do water and sewer and roads here. What I want you to hear is that if everyone pays their fair share, we do a lot better as a city. Right now, today, we're about 750,000 unpaid water bills. 750,000. So we're gonna have to start a shut-off program to encourage people to pay their water bill. There's no way around it. And so that's going to be coming soon, and I wanna tell mayor and council that. We're going to let people know, you need to come in and pay, because it is going to, you know, result in a water shut-off. We have the RAP program. We have the program that I've explained numerous times that they can apply for the state of Michigan funds. Yeah, right, the RAP funds is the ones that we all contribute to, and then that money's distributed to people who need it. And then we have the other, the one that's authorized by the state of Michigan. 35 people signed up?
I think that's number.
35 out of our entire city, and I would venture to say that half of our city is eligible.
And that's where like, if you tell people, come in, we're gonna shut off your water, come talk to us.
Okay, if they
right?
go the tax property, is he gonna pay automatic, the water is, nobody paid, the tax property?
If they don't pay their water bill, it will get rolled over, you're correct, to their property taxes.
Yeah, just do the property tax.
And we will. At that point though, however, an individual is paying penalties, late fees, they're gonna pay extra on their property taxes.
Except to him.
It is
People,
up
if
to every
they-
individual. What
If
I
people,
wanna
they didn't pay
encourage,
monthly,
yeah, what I wanna encourage is that there's free money out there, and all people have to do is apply. Take 15 minutes and apply for it. And so we've put those online over and over and over. But we need the community to notice that, pay attention, and fill out the paperwork.
So a year ago, when the city was allowed to apply for all of our residents that would benefit from it, I don't know why, 181 properties is what's in my head. I could, that might not be exactly, but it was close to 200 properties that were eligible for free money.
Had to do nothing to
And
get it.
the city did all the application for them. This time, the state said, no, the individual has to come apply themselves, they wouldn't allow us to, and only 35 people went and did it. So, there's probably 150 others that could have, and they didn't.
You guys are wholesalers of water, so the city buys the water and sewer services from GLEWA. So if people aren't paying the bills, then it's their neighbors that are subsidizing their purchase of water, some of whom may not be in any better shape than the people who aren't paying. And I've seen it happened in Inkster back in 2012, where that city wound up in emergency management because they weren't setting the water rates high enough to cover the cost, and they weren't collecting enough of the money, and when they were finally forced to bring that fund in line, they had to take the money from the general fund, and that's what put them into emergency management. So while the water fund and the general fund are separate and distinct, the general fund's always gonna be the backstop if the water fund doesn't have enough money in it. As it relates to income tax, for those of you who were here for the budget, or for the first presentation that we did about 6 weeks ago, you'll note that the same amount of money came in 2003 for income tax as came in 2020 prior to the pandemic. So you have not a lot of wage inflation in those 17 years, but certainly a significant amount of wage inflation through the economy in general. And you've got roughly 8,000 more people in the city. So those two factors and the failure for that amount to increase tells us that there's an issue with compliance.
And again, going back to the income tax, does the city get something from the federal or from the state that this is how much you're supposed to get in? How does that work?
What is the rate?
Yeah,
What is the rate that we charge, you mean?
the rate, no. My question is,
To
how,
determine compliance.
yeah, so how do we know how much we're supposed to be getting from income tax?
So we don't get so.
How does that work?
What we are able to do is, we request what's called a state tape from the Michigan Department of Treasury about a year after everyone should have filed their taxes, because we have to wait until the state does all their processing. And then we compare it to the tax returns we receive. So the state runs a tape for us and says, this is who we think you should have got a tax return from based on what was filed at the state level. So
Okay.
they had a Hamtramck address, they had a W-2, they had Hamtramck on it, whatever it is that makes them think this person should have filed in Hamtramck. We then compare that to the people that filed returns with us. If we did not get a return, then our system will start generating letters to that individual, basically saying, based on the return you filed with the state of Michigan, we believe you should have filed a return with the city of Hamtramck. Please contact us, show us why we're wrong. I mean, sometimes they're wrong. One that we run into quite often is the people actually live in Detroit. If you really look at them, they live in Detroit, but they had a Hamtramck address. So, I mean, some of them just contact us and say, you're wrong, I live in Detroit, or you're wrong. The business was in Hamtramck, but I never went to Hamtramck to work. I worked in the suburbs doing something. Others will contact us and eventually file a return. Some don't contact us, and that's where we need the people in-house. What Innovative won't do is take those people after we're required to reach out to them 3 times. After we've reached out to them 3 times and they've not tried to contact us, are not paying any attention to us, that's when we can take them to court and get a court order for them to pay their taxes.
So a
So-
lot of people pay their federal, they send to the IRS, they send to the state, but they forget their local. And so that's the piece that we're trying to do, as much education with the community. We put it in the newsletter, we put it in the newspaper, we put it on our Facebook page, so that people understand that the word is, Hamtramck is a taxing city for income tax. Not every city does income tax, but when that law was passed years ago, Hamtramck was a part of that.
Now, is there a percentage, how much people who don't comply? Do you guys have those numbers?
The number of
I
people,
don't
I
know
couldn't
those
give you
numbers. I could probably get some,
well, here's the thing, income tax is the one department that's not foiable. So, for instance, if you wanted to know if I paid, or if the mayor paid, or someone, that would not be available to you. That income tax is a private transaction, so the income tax director would speak directly to the taxpayer, but they're not gonna talk to you about your neighbor. So, I would not bring to this city council meeting, there's 522 people that didn't comply. I would not do that. You know, simply for that privacy. I don't want somebody trying to figure it out. You know, I would wanna be respectful of that law.
And I'm referring percentage, I'm not referring,
I got you.
you know, is
Yeah.
it 200 residents, is it, you know?
I can easily tell you about water, that $750,000 is outstanding, exact number, because that's public information. Anybody can go online and look to see if their neighbor paid or didn't pay. But income tax is a different animal, so,
I don't even have access to
No,
that system.
we can't do that.
So, and then, okay, let's say if someone doesn't pay 19, 20, 21, how can we get this money? What's the
That's what we spoke
procedure?
about.
So when they've made the 3 contacts that they're required to make, if they don't get a response, somebody from income tax will show up in the prosecutor's office, and before Matt left, it was Matt. Now presumably they'll come up to me and there'll be a stack this high, and I'll get writer's cramp signing my name on the complaint for, 200 people at a time.
They will get a notice to appear in court.
Okay.
So, I mean, the staff, I think, handles a certain number at a time. When a file has reached the 3 contact threshold, then they know that the next step is to take it. I sign the complaints, but they're the ones that actually appear in court for those income tax hearings that get set probably a monthly basis, like they probably have 1 day a month. I don't really have much to do with that, but
What if someone doesn't show up to court?
then they get a bench warrant or a default judgment
Okay.
issued in the amount that's requested.
it is not me that goes to court, but from what I hear from staff, it is not uncommon for people just not show up to court. And then there's a bench warrant, and if they don't speed or don't do something that means the police pull them over,
You'll never see it.
you'll never see.
Well,
Right, so the other part of it is, if we do get a default judgment for $400, the income tax department can file a garnishment with the state or some other obvious place where a taxpayer may get money back, like a state
A
income
refund.
tax refund. So that's that's typically the way that, through that garnishment, that they will collect, and it'll just be they will just intercept money from the state. Or if they know of something that the person owns or an account, they can garnish on that. But the cost of collection, sometimes the best recourse is to just garnish the tax return with the state.
So we were doing very good with compliance prior to COVID. And once COVID hit and the governor extended the time that you could file, and rightly so, she did that rightly so, we're still creeping back up into compliance. People forgot to comply.
So that means before COVID,
We were on a good trajectory.
okay.
We weren't there, but we were every year improving
Was-
compliance. And what was so good about it was that once someone had to come in and got the 3 letters and showed up, from that point forward, they were compliant. You know, they said, oh, I didn't know, or, okay, here I am now, now I get it, I understand. Federal, state, city, you know, people don't do this on purpose. They do it unintentionally, but then it crops up, and it's hard to catch up afterwards. You know, if someone said to me, go back and find 10 years ago,
And
I have an
this-
accountant, but, you know, that's hard.
There's such a long time we have to wait after I filed my tax returns. The city has to wait, it's a year to a year and a half before we can even ask the state treasurer for that tape.
That matching tape.
Because they, you know, everybody's filed with them by April 30th. Takes them a year to actually put it all in their system.
But
To get all
additionally,
the data.
any one of you, myself included, you can ask for an extension, you know, to the city or to the state or the federal government. You pay the penalty and interest if you owe money, but you are allowed to ask for an extension for 6 months, just like that. Or you just say so. So there's a lot of variables there, but we're doing our best, and that's why I'm recommending for that department an increase of 1 FTE. And I promised you I wouldn't keep you real late, so let's do major local roads, water, sewer, and then if we have any other questions, we'll move through those. So Bill came up to do these 3 departments. So major roads. So our major roads, we're expecting about 1.7 million in revenue, and our appropriation, we expect, is about 1.1. So Bill can tell you exactly what he's planning to do.
We have Kniff between Kona and Buffalo. So Kniff is gonna be a water sewer project as well, all the way from Joseph Campo all the way to Buffalo, but the reconstruction for the roads is gonna be from Kona to Buffalo. And we're working in conjunction with Wayne County and Detroit for Hamtramck Drive from Kona to Joseph Campo as well. So that's a big project going on, because they're trying to revamp all the way around, the Zero, you know, the GM plant. They already resurfaced, the service drive area, working on Mount Elliott and our section there, so we're coordinating that all together, along with the Joe Louis Greenway is heading that way as well. Once it gets off the Campo to Hamtramck Drive, it goes, into Detroit that way.
And they filled the potholes there the other day.
I saw your email, I was happy about that.
It took a while. but
It was bad.
We're still working
Now,
on.
I'm talking about the Detroit part of it.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
That took a while, we're still waiting on, Wayne County.
Yeah, there you go.
On the local roads, we have, Eveline, we're doing,
These numbers.
here.
So this is your revenue is here.
So
Yeah.
revenues is 727,000, and then our appropriations are 1,139,910.
So we had some money in fund balance, because we have these road projects that, you know, we can get some help with. This was a time to spend that fund balance. So go ahead and tell that list.
All right, so we have Eveline, and this is all from the Pazer study that happened back, I believe that was 2019 is when they came into the study what roads, and streets, and even alleys, when it came to it, needed to be, repaired. So we have Eveline, Joseph Campo, Gallagher, we have Dan east of Joseph Campo, so that's gonna be all in that project as well, into sewer and water. Yeamans between DeQuinder and Lumpkin, and Goodson from Campo to Lumpkin, which is all part of that sewer, phase as well. And then we have, And then obviously we do potholes with this, all our winter maintenance and the sidewalk program, along with, the speed humps that we'll be sharing with, the Hamtramck schools. And then we also have a couple meetings with the charter schools that are interested in getting on that as well. And that, when we did the bid for that, we made sure that the company, all the companies, whoever we chose the bid for, were willing to add those onto their list, and they were, so.
This is a little sidebar, is, one of the teachers at Dickinson East asked if they could get a crosswalk put in on the other side of the building from where there is a crosswalk. I forget which side has a
Send
crosswalk
me
and
an
which
email,
doesn't. I will,
and I'll have
and
the
that's why I was
police chief
wondering
look
if it
at
was
that.
possible, yeah.
Yeah, the police chief is out this week, but send me an email and
Okay.
I'll get that to her.
So I just wanna add real quickly, the two that we just talked about, major and local roads, are both funded through what we call Act 51 revenue, gas tax revenue, that the city gets from the state of Michigan. And there are very strict reporting and how we can use that money. And every year we have to report, so last year, I think it was, we're required to use a certain amount on it for non-motorized, so last year it was like, we have to fix some sidewalks, we have to do something, because if we don't use the money the way they tell us to use it, they take it back. So Bill has to balance what our community needs and what the state is telling us, or how the state is telling us we have to spend those dollars. But these are not city dollars, they're state money.
For a specific purpose.
Right, so we couldn't say, take this money and,
Pay the pension.
yeah.
I'm gonna use that example every time, because I would love to have extra money to pay the pension, so, make no mistake. The other thing, when you're talking about these funds, is that we're always trying to attract other money. Remember that when we do those large projects, we only pay not even 19% of it. So we're really leveraging that against larger, grants from other places, so. The other thing, people think when gas prices go up, that's gonna make this fund more flush. People curb their driving when there's gas prices go up, and generally it sort of balances right out. We've watched that over the years. About, I'm trying to think how many years ago when the gas went up, spiked up, everybody thought, oh boy, we're gonna get more money in our Act 51 money. Doesn't happen, because I'll decide not to drive as many places and spend as much. So, all right, the next one is our water sewer budget. We already said it, and I'm gonna say it again. We are $750,000 right now below where we should be on collections. We will be notifying people that we're gonna start a shut-off program. And so please encourage your constituents to get in and pay their water bills. Unfortunately, we have to charge a penalty and interest, so people are paying more than they would have if they'd have paid on time. And, we hear about that, but they can go to DivDat and pay, they can come to the counter, they can mail it in, drop it in the drop box, however they'd like to do that.
And we do work on, payment programs as well.
Thank you.
If somebody comes to the counter, we had one today, we'll work on a payment program, but that will be for their rearage. They'll still have to pay their monthly payment, but if they're behind so much, we can work on a payment program with them. It's all set up through BSNA and how it's, I couldn't give you the price, exactly how it works, but there is options out there if someone is behind in their payment, so they can get back on track, and they won't keep receiving the penalty, so long as they make their monthly payment and then their payment that they're making for their past due.
They enter a payment plan and stick to it, they will not continue to accrue those late fees, so.
And when anytime we get a call, or if they come to the counter, we also, direct them to the RAMP program, to the LEWAP, which is the low-income housing program, the one they mentioned earlier, that they have to do themselves. It takes a couple minutes, but the information is there for them to apply.
All right, so I have this, here we go, just like this. There we go. So this is our revenue right here.
Revenue right now is $9,340,017. And our $9,190,917. So,
That's the expectation for the expenditures for that department, and the highlights of that.
obviously our lead service lines, we have, the water main replacement on Caniff, all the way from Joseph Campo to Buffalo, which is a big one, will finish off, that area, along with the lead service lines in there, and then, the Dan project, which is the Joseph Campo to the park, with all the updates in there, that's an important one. There's a few service lines in there as well. We're adding a couple hydrants back there that have been removed from years past because of the fact that there was no use for them back there. Now with all the updates planning, that's all part of that program.
One important point to make on the water and sewer side of things, again, you guys are more or less in a position of being a wholesaler. The rates that the rates that the city is charged for the water, which is the bulk of the cost, that in the sewer
Processing is the bulk of the cost.
Those rates are set on Randolph Street by Great Lakes Water Authority. We get those rates and they get passed through to the end user, so the rates are not something that you or we control. That's what we get from our only, the only provider available to us and most other communities in southeastern Michigan is Great Lakes. They're under the same kinds of pressures that all of municipal governments are under. Electricians that were paid $65,000 3 years ago are now getting paid $110,000 because there's not a lot of them. They need them to run the plants, and they're competing against the big three and all of the other construction projects that are going on downtown. Same thing for all skilled trades and just general services people. I've negotiated those contracts for GLEWA, so I kind of understand the cost pressure that they're under too. They pass it on to their local communities, but they set the base rate, and so there's not much control that we have here over what goes on with those
So,
rates.
and you'll remember that we did a water rate study, and we use that modeling every year to put in, you heard Jim say that we pay the cost of their electrical engineer. We also have to roll into that the cost of our employees, the cost of our contractors, the cost of our repairs. That's why we want new water mains whenever possible, because band-aiding these repairs costs a lot of money, and having a new line that doesn't need that constant repair. So that's our goal, to get to that for water and sewer. But all of those costs are rolled into that cost model, and that's how you get the calculation of what your water rate's going to be. So, so with that, that's going to be going up. That'll be shared with you with the fee schedule at our next meeting. And other than questions, I think we've shared everything here, yes. Susan, anything else? Jim, anything else?
One fund you missed, and
Okay.
it'll only take you a minute, so I'll hand it to
Oh,
you.
all right. All right, the building fund, that is the, on every court action, there is a building fund fee that's associated with ticket payment in certain things in the court. And so we bring in about $45,000 a year into the building fund, and the judge has jurisdiction on how that money is spent. We work cooperatively when we had elevator repairs, because it was people getting to the court, or when we wanted to do something in the corridor. She was very agreeable to making those improvements that were necessary out of that building budget. Thank you. Okay. So, questions, comments, more to come, paper's gonna come your way. But this was your foundation to learn where we get the money and then how it's spent. If you have questions after you leave here, I'm available by phone, email tomorrow, whatever. Happy to do that. We will be putting the ad the legal ad in the newspaper saying that the budget will be available next Monday. And that'll be available to people if they wanna look at it. We'll make sure that you get, the same thing that's gonna be held at the clerk's office for public viewing. So give us a couple days, because a couple of those items that I mentioned at the beginning, state drug forfeiture, federal police training, the indigent defense, This week is when we hope to have those numbers. If not, we're gonna have to do estimates. And we've been holding people's feet to the fire, but, you know, you're dealing with the state, we're not the only people that are bugging for numbers. You know, we were lucky to get those marijuana numbers last week, you know, so that we could put actual predictions in here, the estimates. So, any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for being here tonight, appreciate it. And, our next meeting is going to be April 12th at City Council. That'll be the first reading of the actual budget. And so the first reading will be, you'll have that in front of you. We will not give a budget presentation that night. That would happen at the second meeting later in the month. That first one is for everybody to take it, chew on it, talk about it, decide what you're thinking about, and then you folks could give us ideas. We'll hear from the public at that second budget meeting. Okay? All right, thank you all.
Safe travels home.